we go. Okay, so if I want to share my screen, I guess that's the best way to do this PowerPoint. And I want to do this one. Okay. Great. Okay.
So yeah, we're talking about the collaboration contract. We've got Sunshine here. Huzzah. Mark's chilling over on the couch over there. We got the president of the Children's Society.
We've got Jessica. We have Mark. Hi, Mark. And why?
Mark says hello.
Hi. I don't know why I have a low battery from charging. That's okay. Okay. Oh, that's why. Okay. All right. So Jessica's here. Mark's here. Glitz is here. Carrington's here. Ashley's here. And Alberto's here. Okay. All right. Is that everyone? Yes, I didn't miss anyone. Correct. Okay.
I believe so.
All right.
Janice is here.
Okay. Janice. Janice.
That's correct.
Hi, Janice.
Great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go in because we don't have very much time left. We've got about 23 minutes. So to recap from last week, we talked about collaboration contracts. Today is January 10th, 2024. I am Ashley, and this is a Communitopia focused meeting. Last week, I said that for negotiations that we would start with introductions with a potential collaborator, and then we would meet amongst ourselves to discuss ideals for how we can receive and offer value. And then we would meet with the potential collaborator to present these value points. Then we would meet with Communitopia independently again to discuss the specifics of engagement, especially the percentages that would be shared in terms of finances. Then we would meet with the potential collaborator and present these specifics and gather the potential collaborator's approval or accommodations or adjustments desired. We would then separate and meet independently with Communitopia to discuss the proposed adjustments. And then we would come together with the potential collaborator, present the final offer and the contract that we have written up with all of these specifics and adjustments for officiating the commitment. At that time, we would have a yes or no, a final yes or no. And at this point, I don't really see there being much need for adjustments at that point, because I feel that we've had enough time and enough back and forths to be able to consider what it is that we are capable of. And we've talked amongst ourselves to ensure that we're not over promising and we're in a line with our checks and balances in a way to where we know each other well enough to say whether or not we're overcommitting. So I think at that point, when we present our offer and contracts, I don't think there's much room for other revisions at that point, but that's just a personal opinion. I'm not saying that we can't. I just think it's important that, there not be last minute adjustments when we're ready to sign a contract with each other. I think it's important that if there is coming up last minute adjustments, then that's probably going to continue throughout the entire collaboration point. And I don't know if I want something that's going to be constantly challenging what it is that we've kind of set up together. But, I'm not saying I'm not flexible or willing to be flexible, but when we're talking about contracts, I've had a lot of experience with people not following through and wanting to make changes because they're not willing to do the due diligence. And that, quite frankly, is alarming when you're talking about a business collaborator. Okay, back to Glitz. Glitz presented here. I don't know if he wants to go over what he presented again, or if I can. What do you think, Glitz? Do you mind if I go over the points as I remember them, or do you want to elaborate on your points again?
I'm happy to hear your summary and offer any points that I notice as we go.
Or that were misquoted. Great.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Okay, so you discussed energy exchange agreement and that there would be at least two parties. We needed to define services provided and received, maintenance energy, and compensation. And we need to come up with a basic standard, what is fair with measurement points, services rendered, how much compensation is required for volunteering, volunteering being the startup energy efforts, designing a custom plan, scholarships, discussing that, it needs to be defined. And the needs outweigh the resources up front, which would be the individual that we're collaborating with or working with. If their needs outweigh, we have to also define what it is that is a need and why that would outweigh the resources up front. And if it does, then we have a resource pot that we're allowed to utilize from Communitopia's main funds. And we need to agree on an agreed allotment for how much we are willing to upfront offer as a resource. Is there anything that I said wrong or that you want to add to that?
No, that seems pretty comprehensive.
Okay, great. And Christopher, you talked about Terra Gardens and you talked about the opportunity for discovery as a discovery piece for us. Where Communitopia finds the host for gardens, we find the clients, and Terra Garden guides the planting, the education, and the money that we save Terra Gardens is offered as payment to Communitopia. And anything that we do with Terra Gardens and profits, we plan to give 10% of the increments to the landowner. So, you know, as the client that we are working with, they will be promised 10% of the profits of, I think, the harvests.
I think that's reversed. I think that Communitopia would be taking 10% as a tithe.
What was said was the money saved. What Christopher said was that the money saved is offered as payment, and that the client would be offered 10% of the either food profits or financial profits that come off of their land.
Yeah,
that's a separate thing.
I think that's in instances where all that the landowner is providing is the land. In collaborations with Terra Gardens, the landowners would likely be paying for the installations as well and would receive a greater increment of the harvest.
Right. Yeah, that was the initial kind of concept. So if Terra Gardens secures, or we secure a client for Terra Gardens, then 10% of the profit made from performing the action of planting their garden.
Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you type this into the chat so I can just copy and paste it to your slide instead of transcribing what you're saying?
Sure. I'm down to explain that. I think it does say it in the document that I created already.
Yes, I understand. I just wanted in this
clarity. Yeah,
I just wanted in this right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can.
I was having trouble typing as fast as you were talking, so either slow down so I can type it, or type it as you're talking. Okay,
that's fine. I can align this out like a little bit more clearly, but the idea is like
the way I would phrase it is that a minimum of 10% of the harvest is shared by both, like, either party, and a sliding scale to determine actual percentage is based on the financial contribution.
Okay, I got lost again.
So
I just can't type that fast.
I apologize.
It's okay. I need time, like pauses in between what you're saying, because it keeps going, and that's why I asked Christopher to do it, because it was his words, and
okay,
but it's okay.
It sounds like what Glitz is describing is similar to what my thought processes are. So we can take our time to get it in writing. I don't mind. So yeah, so I mean, like, so 10% of the profit that Terra Gardens charges, say Terra Gardens charges $10,000 for a garden. 1,000 of it would go back to Communitopia. If there's also the option of harvest going back to Communitopia. So, but ultimately the person who is planting the garden will be receiving a good majority of the food from the garden, and they can determine what they want to do with it. If they want to donate some of it to Communitopia in excess, then that's fine. But ultimately, the first objective would be to essentially get an agreement between Terra Gardens, who charges a certain amount of money, and then Communitopia's bank account gets filled a bit for providing them with the client. So that would be the 10%. So it's actually 10% of the profit, and can be talked about the harvest. So if somebody, say Terra Gardens is needing all that money for whatever, then maybe we can make an agreement that, like with the person that is getting the garden planted, that, well, in our helping of Terra Gardens to plant this, then perhaps 10% of the harvest can go back to Communitopia, that can then be distributed amongst its members, or distributed in whatever ways that we determine. Maybe, put it at like some food shelters or something like that, or sorry, food banks. So there's a couple different options there, but we were talking about essentially 10% of the profit, and or 10% of the actual harvest itself.
And I think that could be up to the customer to kind of negotiate those things for what they are interested in exchanging energy wise.
Right. So the basis of it is that Terra Gardens will charge X amount of money, and we don't want to necessarily create contracts. We could, but we don't necessarily want to create contracts with every single person that's getting a garden planted. Instead, we'd like to have a contract with Terra Gardens that if we get you a client, then 10% of the profits is going back to Communitopia. So that's what.
So it's not the money saved is offered as payment. That's totally deleted.
That's also an option too. So the option would be like, because usually they're charging $25 per labor per person to come out and plant. So say in like the beginning stages, we bring out 5 people to plant. Well, suddenly they don't have to pay those $25 an hour per person. And instead we can make an agreement that at least some of that money, it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Is that in addition, or is that part of the 10%?
That could be in addition, because we would get the client, and we at that point don't actually have to go out and do the planting. We already got the client, so we already have the compensation with the profit, so that there's 10% of that profit is being taken and put in Communitopia's account. Then on top of that, we could also come out in force and say bring 3 to 5 people to come out and do the work. And if that's the case, then now suddenly they're not paying the $25 an hour per person to an individual person. But, ultimately, if somebody's going out and consistently planting with Terra Gardens, then they should be paid the $25 an hour, and it shouldn't all just go to Communitopia. Like, a person needs to be able to make money with having a job with them. If it's a consistent job and they want to continue doing that, they should be paid a fair amount. But, my thought is, especially in the initial processes when we're learning, perhaps we can all go out there and do some planting and learn how to do the things. And then they'd be willing to say, okay, well, we saved $25 an hour per person. Say there's 5 people, that's $125 an hour that they're saving. So maybe they don't need to give the entire 125 over, because we're just going on a volunteer base, but maybe they're willing to do like 50 an hour. So then that goes to the Communitopia account in addition to the 10%. So the 10% is locked in for, we got you a customer and we've passed you the information, and we're working with the customer too to say well, what kind of guilds you want and stuff like that. So it's like almost like a sales commission type basis. And there's also the opportunity for people to be making their own money as well on top of that, which they might even be willing to say, give the person that commission. So if Glitz got somebody, give the person that commission. But since they're working with Communitopia, since Glitz is working with Communitopia as a whole, then we're willing to also support the nonprofit Communitopia and give them, say, another 10%. Or I don't exactly know. What is the Terra Gardens deal on when you get a customer? What is the?
Alright, so it's $100 for like when they come, the constellation, what is it called?
Consultation.
For the consultation, it's $100. Out of that $100, you get what, 25 bucks?
Okay.
Isn't it 50?
25 bucks or 50 bucks, 25 or 50 bucks. I can't remember. Sorry. And then once they say, okay, we pick out a pattern or a design.
Yeah,
Once
guild.
they pick up
Right.
a design, a guild or design, then you get 1% of that, and that's
1%.
usually around $1,000. So whatever 1% of 1,000 is.
And it was stated as 1 to 5%, actually.
Okay, 1 to 5%, depending on how big it is and
Okay,
all the
cool.
little details.
So then maybe that's the percentage, but they might even be willing to do a little bit more since it's working with another business. They might be willing to hit that 10% mark, but that's what we could go to them and say, well, hey, 10% can go to Communitopia. If they're just like, well, 10% is too much, we say, well, what about 5%? Is 5% of what you're making go?
I feel like in this scenario, they're gonna do it by, just say we do Radiant Church, like I plan on doing. That's gonna be a really big one. So yes, 10% of that. I feel that Terra Gardens will give that to us easily.
Yeah.
But with the bigger food force,
Right.
I don't know. But all the little small ones, as of right now, is gonna probably end up staying how it is.
Yeah, and it certainly can be like there's room for flexibility in it too. Like, like you were kind of saying earlier, yeah.
I mean, 1% of $1,000 is $10, so.
Smaller ones take a bigger percentage, bigger ones take a smaller percentage.
Yeah, bigger ones we take a smaller percentage, smaller we take a bigger.
I was thinking that's probably more what it would be like, is like the smaller installations, they would pay us 5%, and
Well, and then also
might get scaled down.
Smaller, they pay us 10%. Bigger ones, they might pay 7.5% or 5%.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a bigger chunk, right.
Yeah.
And there's also then from there's also the opportunity for saying, well, what if we bring you 5 workers that can go do this and they're just learning how to plant these things and they'll be hands on deck to do the things. Well, that's worth value too. So is that a percentage based thing? Is that an hourly thing? Generally they're paying hourly, 25 an hour. But if a whole group of us comes out, maybe it can be like a percentage thing where some of it comes to Communitopia and even the individuals can be paid potentially through Communitopia. So if Communitopia makes $3,000 and there's like 3 people working, well, maybe those people can each get, 2 to 3 or 400 bucks.
Like a temp agency.
Kind of like that, yeah. So it's like passing the money through Communitopia and paying them through that, and Terra Gardens has paid us a certain amount of money because we're bringing the people to actually do the thing. So, there's some flexibility there.
So there's the potential to get paid for leads. There's the potential to get paid for installation. And is that it?
Yeah, essentially, until we get to the point where maybe we can actually people learn enough that they're doing the actual consulting and just taking.
Oh yeah, that's it. Well, that's paid for leads, right? So
yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, otherwise it's just like we're recreating the wheel basically.
Yeah, exactly. So what we can do is negotiate an aspect of payment to Communitopia. And then we also want to negotiate for individual people.
No, that was right. It was $100 is the leads, and then 1 to 5 would be paid for sales.
For the sales, right? So the actual making of the sales. So that makes sense because then, every 5 of them or so, they're actually going to get a sale, something like that. So then they're paying for the consultation because at least the word is getting out, and and they might have a client in the future, but every now and again, someone's going to say, yes, let's do this, and then it's locked in. And if it's a really big project, then we don't really need as much because say it's $100,000 project, like a huge, food forest. Well, 1% of that is that's 10,000. 10,000? No, that's 100,000. So it'd be like $1,000. So so like that's 1%. So but then 5% is $5,000. So there's the opportunity to get some money into the bank account, and it's also them understanding that it's not just paying the individual, it's paying a group that can continue.
Labor is the other point where we have potential revenue.
That's correct.
providing
Right.
providing laborers that.
Now, when I first talked to them, Terry Gardens, they did state that, me working for them just the beginning stages, if I start getting a lot of people coming in, then I will have a permanent position and not just a, what is it called? Like what I'm doing now.
Not just a commission position.
Yes, not just commission.
Right.
I'll be an actual employee
Right.
with pay, salary or whatever.
Mhm.
And I feel that Communitopia can do that with them too. Once we really start putting, getting these food force, coming to them, then this whole contract thing will be a lot different.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot to put
I
out
don't-
there now.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree or disagree that the relationship could change as our, I don't know if it's necessarily needs to change. Like, why would we want to change, and how would it benefit either party to change our? I mean, I guess if we're just bringing them so much business that they don't have time to run all the leads, then things could change.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. And it will eventually get like that. It's going to be that they're going to be so busy that they're going to need us just as much as we need them. It will get like that.
So, and then what it is that the individuals will be paid, while also Communitopia will also get like a piece of that pie into the Communitopia bank account, which will then recycle back into what the projects are that we're trying to work on, so maybe it buys us some land or whatever, because we've, locked in 20, 30 food forests, and we're able to, with the percentage of it, and that's something that then we can essentially work with Terra Gardens to set up a food forest there, which is an exchange. So, it's we're keeping it circular almost intentionally, but we don't want to go to them with something that's too big for them to actually maintain. Something like, we don't want to say, well, 50% or whatever.
I think I don't think it would be outside of the realm of reasonable. I mean, we're already collecting on these things up front, so like, any further kind of dipping into the honeypot, so to speak, would need to come with a mutual benefit for them. So
Right.
Well, I think
what are we bringing to them that incentivizes them to increase what they're giving back to us?
Right. Well, that would be probably like leads and labor, the sales and labor.
Right.
also,
And those are the things we're already being compensated for. So
Right.
what are we doing that's going above and beyond, in the sense of like the extra mile that entitles us to ask for more from them?
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. Well, then also that's why I am putting something together with St. Pete Youth Farm, Terra Gardens, and us, and the cleanups. I want us to be out there with the community. We're gonna get Terra Gardens' name out there more. We're gonna get our name
really
out
it.
there.
That's really it. That's the extra mile, is the marketing.
Exactly.
The marketing that we're not being compensated for.
Well, and then, see, we need to actually do it before we get paid for it. On this note, I feel, because we need to put ourselves out there. We need to be known.
Sure.
So this is our chance to be known. This is what we do. We put fundraisers together for community. We help each other. This is what we're doing. This is what we bring to the table.
Right.
And let's show it. Let's bring it when it starts happening, and I start putting all this together. Let's us get our asses out of the gear and just go. Let's do this. And and that's with all the cleanups, collecting the trash, doing things for without being asked. Recycling yourself, just so that we can bring the bottles and the glass and whatever else we need to this youth farm, and have all these children or teenagers there, and let's teach them. Let's really get involved.
Right. So I guess my thought is like, how do we sweeten the pot? How do we show Terra Gardens that we have more value than just these revenue points, that we can help them build their business beyond just these direct impacts that we have more to offer. And I think marketing is really the key here, that we're gonna put together events that will, feature their involvement in our mission,
So
so.
the events is also, events and workshops is also one of those things added onto there
What
too.
was
that
the
there's-
third, what was the third collaborator point for, you said Terra Gardens, the youth forum, and who was the other one? The beach cleanups, was that it?
Oh, I also want to do with Kenny,
Yeah,
Oh.
beach cleanups with Kenny.
with Kenny, and then his friend with the kayaks.
Party
Yeah,
for a
bring-
porpoise.
I don't know if he actually put that out there yet.
Party
Oh.
with the porpoise for a porpoise.
But yeah.
I've been
Okay.
talking with him a little bit. so-
Guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I had until 3 o'clock and I have something
yep.
that I want to do right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and sign out. You're welcome to continue without me if you would like. But I will need to watch this later.
Thanks,
But
Ashley.
I had from 2 to 3 available for this, and I have something else planned until the meeting at 4. So I will see you guys on Zoom then, and I will be in transit. I'll be leaving downtown at 4 o'clock, dropping my kid off, and then I'll meet at Carrington's subsequently. And Glitz will be going first for the presentation, and I will be ready to present and have the computer hopefully set up by 3:40, so that way I can kind of take over doing the financial funding presentation. Carrington said that he was going to wait until next week to do his presentation due to, the delays with the banking and wanting to make sure that he has time to kind of put that all together. So
Makes sense.
I appreciate you guys discussing this further, and I look forward to further discussions on this point. I think it's going somewhere, and I want to thank Willie for coming on here. We were hoping that we would have some moments to discuss the spiritual revenue that we'll be getting from these moon ceremonies and how we would be collaborating with Communitopia and what percentages would be appropriate. But we'll have to wait on that, considering we didn't really have enough time, unfortunately, to discuss that further. So
Thank you for organizing this meeting, Ashley.
I
Agreed.
appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop can the recording continue if somebody else takes over? It's going
Just
to the
make,
cloud, not the computer, so.
I think if you quit, it'll just switch it over to probably me since I'm the other Chris Moore, and it'll just continue recording.
I
as
think
normal.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right. I got it. I'm gonna save
Well,
this
it-
and then.
It shouldn't kick us out of the meeting, so we
Yeah,
have
and
to.
Ashley, if you could upload, we'll figure it out later. Don't need to do it now, but that
When
would
I
be
get there, we can do it after the meeting, okay?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Sounds
All right. Talk to you
Sweet.
soon.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
bye.
Thanks, baby.
Arigatos.
Bye. So,
Cool. Great.
I'm going
great
to assign
conversation.
you, and hopefully I didn't assign myself again, but we will find
I'm
out
the
if I did.
host, and it looks like it's still recording, so I think we're good. There we go. Perfect. Okie dokie smokies. Well, that's a really good start. Yeah, I definitely think, there's plenty more to discuss as far as like the actual like collaboration contract, but that's a really good solid framework for it.
Yeah, what I was kind of building up to was this idea that we want to tie the success of our partners to our own success in
Right.
bigger ways than just direct collaboration, that we have an incentive to promote their business even when we're not being paid directly by them.
Right.
Which I
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And there's also just like a lot of opportunity through the events and the workshops to be advertising and bringing people in as workers and as clients even. So people who are just interested in food forests like this, if we host events that will, give them a bit of info on how to do it and what to, and like what it is, they might be somebody
Yeah.
that becomes a client or somebody that becomes a worker. So, to be able to bring it all together into something that's cohesive that can then benefit them as well. And they can really be like, our go-to food forest experts essentially. And then we pass people over their way. Anyone interested in the details of like how this works. If you guys want to work with Terra Gardens as an employee or as a salesperson or whatever it is that you feel called to do with them, then we'll kind of pass people over their way. to put some energy into it. And also we'll likely be putting energy into Communitopia at the same time too,
Now-
because it's so connected.
They did
And-
say, when I
and
sent that
ideally-
email,
Mhm.
when I sent that email to Tara, I showed Jordan the email for, the farm, the youth farm. They did say they love the email, they love being a part of all this. They are not available like we will be. Like, they're only available like once or twice a month, if that. Like, to be participating fully in all the activities, like the
Sure.
trash cleanup, all that. So that's what we are doing. Now, their name is out there, you know, and we're promoting that, but we're doing all the legwork. So, and we're gonna be doing all the art, we're gonna be doing all the fundraising, we're gonna be setting everything up. That is Communitopia. We are bringing the community together in all aspects.
Yeah.
You know, and we will get noticed for it, and that is gonna be us. I
So there's,
feel.
yeah, so there's also value.
We're really our community organizers is like our
Yeah,
bread and butter.
yeah,
That's like our thing. It's gonna be our thing for a while until we can save up enough money to go ahead and get our own land and build our community the way we really
well, then
want.
we'll definitely have to be
Then-
community organizers.
Yeah, this is like where we
Yeah,
can like.
I mean,
really
being
focus.
community organizers keeps us from having to be experts in all of these areas and just
Exactly.
Exactly.
bring the experts together.
Exactly, and that's what I envision is bringing all the people that already have their shit together. Why start from scratch? Let's
Right,
bring
right.
it all together. Let's bring our community together and use it.
So there's value in us saying to Terra Gardens, like as we develop this, you know, you guys are our go-to food forest experts.
Right.
And that means that with that collaboration will come clients, but will also come really interesting things like making art in their gardens. Like if we pitch it too, where it's like, hey, like we could give you an edible landscaping company that can help with, you know, making your, you know, your front yard, you know, a beautiful abundant space. We also got artists and we can throw some art in there as well and make it, you know, put some of that extra flair on it and that,
Yes,
you know,
it's like an add-on to a guild that could, you know,
exactly.
do a
Same with the mushroom thing. The mushroom thing
Yes.
is also something they were very
Very
interested in.
interested.
And he
Right.
doesn't really know much about that. So
Yeah.
the mushroom branch, Mushtopia, which is really going to be probably an LLC worker co-op that's, you know, between Justin and I and maybe some other people that are like putting the energy into
Be a
that.
part of that.
So then we can kind of bring him into that as well and say, well, this is how we bring the mushrooms into your guys' grows. Suddenly the value has increased, you know, and so, you know, those are kind of separate conversations too, because it's like, well, if I go out there and put a bunch of, you know, I've inoculated a bunch of mushroom logs and now I'm putting it on there. See you, Willie. Thanks for being here.
Roberto.
Wilberto. So, you know, so it's kind of like there's a number of ways that we can bring value to them. And now it's just a matter of finding a good balance of what is being received back. And that's for both the individual and for Communitopia as a whole. So that's a component. So we want to make sure Communitopia gets some. And then also, and those are the people that want it to get some. Like, you know, a person can come in and say, well, you know, for every $25 an hour, for every hour I work, 5 of it going to Communitopia. And if they know that and see that, you know, well, then that's, you know, it's like it's building up the, you know, the bank basically. But nobody has to do that because they can also just go work if they need to make money and they got to do the 25 an hour. There's no obligations to do it because we're still getting the compensation directly from Terra Gardens for getting them the client and coming out and doing the work and things like that. And if we're bringing like, you know, 10 people to come do the volunteering, well, they're also learning and there's also value in that. And so we're gaining that value. But at the same time, somebody could also pay. It's like we could almost like it sounds a little bit weird, but you could almost get people to pay to come out and do the work that they're charging people to do. Like they could come out and say, this is a workshop where we're showing you how to set up this whole guild because there is value in that, right? So, you know, someone comes out and learns how to set up a whole guild, you know, to make ginger ale. Now they know how to do that, you know?
And also, like you say, the ginger ale class, I would love to do.
Right.
Yeah, they charge $100, $200 tops for a class like that.
Right.
So if we have a lot of people, which we do know a lot of people, and everyone just does a $10, $11 donation or $20 donation, then
Right.
Communitopia would get a part of that.
Right, and then they're also, we're helping them plant their guilds, and then
Right.
they get that payment for planting someone a guild. And we get the 10%, so that there's like that's like I figure the 10% or even five, whatever it is that we agree on, whatever
Right.
percentage it is, that's the baseline of like, okay, Communitopia gets something for being involved in what they're bringing to the table. So there's
Yeah.
that baseline of it. Then there's a lot on top of that that we could then kind of work with, you know?
And it's kind of a good segue into a conversation we need to have about like marketing channels and the different ways that we interact with our different audiences, and set different expectations for people of different means to empower our mission. But that's a longer conversation.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
We know you.
Oh, shoot, look at this.
Weren't you just on TV?
That was strange. Hey, I see someone hugging there and someone hugging there. And- Yeah, I had no idea you were on your way. That's funny. That surprised me. Cool.
Hello.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
We brought some food.
Nice. You guys ate some burgers at the Ford Garage?
I'm
Nice.
Nice to meet you.
For having you here, absolutely. So cool. This is the first time we've been just alone on our recording here, because everyone else is here. Look at us go.
Who's on there?
Just us now. Just us now.
Yeah,
But it's
so
recording, so
I,
it's still valuable.
I have like my little like unofficial Communitopia launch party blueprint.
Okay.
Like ready for
Nice.
some preliminary discussion if we
Love it. Love
so
it.
choose to.
So yeah, we can definitely do that. The question is, what should we be doing at this time right now? Do we want to enable, so first off, tomorrow is the main meeting, we're discussing roles. We don't need to vote on sociocracy yet, so that is something that we probably should try to make sure happens by the next 11th meeting, that we have all the pieces of the puzzle so we know.
I don't think reaffirming sociocracy is a bad thing. Like,
No, it's not,
it's already how we're operating.
but the question is, do we put it in the bylaws, and if we're in agreement on it, we're in agreement on it, you know, like.
Unless someone has revoked their consent.
Well, I think the thing that would be helpful is to ensure that everyone is well informed about what it is as a whole. So ensuring that everyone gets a.
I don't think that I would like to watch some sociocracy videos right now if that's.
Well, we could do that, but we also want to make sure that we're ready for tomorrow's meeting as well. So, and that's more associated with roles,
Yeah,
which is probably the foundation.
what are we doing, Mark?
One more
time.
I disagree. I disagree only in the sense that I think, like equality, like equal membership is like the foundation of what we're doing, and that the roles where we all have these equal roles as participants is probably foundational before anybody has more specific responsibilities.
So what is it? You think it's actually more foundational to understand the sociocracy aspect, because then we can actually get the structure before we actually start laying out the goals.
I think so. I think if we don't agree about our role as equal members, then there's no way to agree that we're as equal members assigning specific roles and tasks.
I see that, I can see the value in that for sure, so. So the understanding that, well, the equal role aspect is part of sociocracy, it's not the entire thing, but that is certainly foundation. I would say that too. So, but we could kind of treat it like a worker co-op in the sense that each person has a vote. And that nobody can like buy votes because they're just like, oh, well, I'm the CEO, like my word says, you know, whatever happens, that's what happens. Like you can't have that. It's like I'm playing my role, but everyone's playing their role, you know. Even if you're, you know, leader of the food forest, you know, it's like you still,
That's good, essentially.
well, sure, but it's like, even at the same time, regardless of what the role is that a person's fulfilling, if they're a member, they have a vote, they
Right.
have that. And so we can agree on that. And so motion to understand that each person who's considered a member, which we then want to define membership, in some of these next steps. But right now, we're pretty low for membership,
Define membership as
attendance and participation, and somebody who desires to be a part of that. And we can assess that, and it's like, well, you've only been in one meeting, and you have no idea what we're doing. You know, like, we'll consider your point,
Right.
but that might not be considered a vote in the circle. But there's certainly ways that you can get from point A to point B, where it's like, well, if you can give them a crash course, this is bylaws, and we, determine is good.
I think
for us.
establishing that those fundamentals definitely increases the urgency for defining membership and protecting membership in some way as well.
Right,
For the integrity of the impact.
so one
If we
vote,
experience some
one
sort of
vote,
influx.
one vote per member is really, I think, that's a good foundation.
Yeah, I don't think we need to, I don't think.
Or is the vernacular like the first membership or like the executive team, like?
So currently it's kind of the same, but it won't be the same
I
when
think-
you start to define the membership.
I think if you define membership as a person that the group consents to being a member.
Right. So, and as we go forward, there'll be membership that isn't necessarily a part of, say, the general circle. So the general circle still there's that circle, their consent is what counts for moving forward with major decisions. And to become a part of the general circle, there's a higher stipulation than just being a member, right? So, but then those members, we still want them to have a voice and an understanding of membership. That like, okay, so this is what it gets you, to be a member, you have a vote in these things that we pass down to the membership. We say, this is the type of decision we want all members to be a part of. So we say, but we can't do that with everything, because there's certain things that the general circle is more informed about. The management knows, and then the people who are just like joining in as members and just want some like benefits and also participation in these ways.
I was just thinking the difference between a participating member and a general member.
Sure, then that's a good way to point it out. So then the general membership is a higher stipulation. There's more, you have to check more boxes to be able to be involved in the decision making.
I would think it's just like an additional vote. Like you set yourself, you've shown that you're a general member, you participated in a way that like somebody nominated you for membership in the general.
Sure. Then like, so within the general circle, there's consent based on the people within that circle. Not everyone's gonna be a part of the general circle, but they might be a part of membership of this larger circle. Depending on where they are in whatever circle, but they're still a member, they're in a circle. So by being part of a circle, you now have a vote within that circle. The people are, taking the votes for, say, the food forest. People who are more informed about the food forest and like what the projects are with that, they're the ones that are talking about the food forest stuff. That doesn't necessarily need to go and skew down into, every circle that exists. It's like they get to make that
The
decision.
general circle could move forward with an initiative that the general or the participating membership doesn't necessarily.
Exactly, right, exactly, so that's.
And laborers essentially.
Right,
The general members.
yeah, exactly, we want them to still have a voice, but they can't just jump into the general circle and say, well, this needs to change like this. Cause it's like, well, we've got this, if you wanna be a part of the general circle and make those sorts of votes, these are the check boxes that you need to make. So that you know that you are informed about everything that's going on, and that you've worked your way into this general circle to be able to make those votes within that circle. And then whenever anybody gets into any circle, they have a vote on the whole membership, membership votes being like, you know, a more general thing that does apply to everyone that's involved in membership. So if we're talking about something that's just associated with participating members, then everyone who's a participating member should have a voice in it. But if it's management making decisions that are associated with our more core team, then really the core team is what's supposed to make those decisions. However, also it can't hurt to have the kind of the general feel of what participating members are feeling about the decisions being made about general circle. So, you know, we can essentially pass this down. So the general circle has passed this motion. You know, we've decided on this, and then we can say, what do you guys consent to this? Now, just them not consenting to it doesn't mean that we have to cut that off and say, you're not
Pushing it to them.
yeah, just for them to say, well, this is like in my circle, the thing that you guys just passed down is going to cause some issues. So then we say, okay, now we can assess this and say, okay, you might be right, but actually what we just passed down is making your guys' life harder. So we don't want that. So now general circle is going to discuss those things in some detail and say, well, maybe we can change it.
We can take these ingredients that were part of the proposal and mix them in a different way.
Exactly.
That works like, right?
And make sure to work and assess those issues.
Wouldn't it be like whoever is being affected the most in the community should have the greatest voice?
Right.
That's the power of sociocracy, is that everybody vote is a deciding factor. That
Right.
if everybody doesn't consent to any part or parcel of the proposal, they have last say.
Oh,
essentially,
right.
and that this is something else. Why?
There's an avenue to pass it back up to the chain and say the general circle could then
immediate
direct
feedback
that
loop.
and say, right, it's the feedback loop, and that's what we want to consistently happen, where it's like, if anything is passed down, that is now causing issues on lower circles, well, we need to hear it. Yeah, and parallel, sure.
I mean, I don't know if this is relevant, but like, I just think of teachers, how like, teachers have a lot of laws inflicted upon them that they have no say in.
Right.
Why are they not? Just because they're not part of the decision makers at the top,
Right.
why are these decision makers making so many choices on our behalf?
Exactly, so it's always like an informed consent, I guess is the best way to say it, so it's like, it's you know, where the general circle can make a decision. And they might just not have at that point been informed that something is gonna happen down here in this other circle that it actually does affect, and so when that gets passed back up, now it's the responsibility of the general circle to assess what they say and say, is this going to be a problem?
Yeah,
you know?
I think there's gotta be an implementation phase for each, like, you know, what do you call them, like protocol?
Yeah,
Or like policy procedures,
right,
they all need to have implementation phases voted on, you know, as a pass, or, you know, I can't imagine having the same implementation phase for everything,
right,
so it would need to be like something that might need a few days, like to figure out.
sure, and like give it enough time to kind of go down the circle, be used. And then if there's issues, then they can pass it back up.
Even
open
just
it all the
having,
time.
yeah, even just having that aspect of the bylaws where we specifically state all of these policies are subject to reapproval after a certain amount of time.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good. I think putting timing on all of it is actually pretty important because we can. It's like, you know, in the same sense that we've been taking like, you know, month by month, you know. Then putting those motions forward and like talking about the things. We have to use it for a while. To see if it is working, so that's where the feedback loop
Right.
comes in. And we wanna make sure that
That implementation.
all the
phase.
way down the whole chain, that anyone has the capability of. You know, either disagreeing or objecting or whatever it is, they can say, you know, I do have an objection. And then it's, as we said, you know, it's like we take on the responsibility by being in the general circle. Or the vision circle, whatever it is, we wanna make sure that we listen. And it's up to us to do that,
We don't want to
so,
create bureaucratic roadblocks where
Right,
people
right.
are running up against this policy and don't have the right to do what's right in the situation.
Right.
It follows on policy, like.
Right.
like it's honest.
But
Right.
now it's
Yeah.
like up to stop infiltration.
Right.
I'm wondering if the law or thing that's happening is affecting a certain group, shouldn't they take on more authority because it is affecting them? Like, should it be centralized? Should it be like whoever's affected and now the power belongs to you?
That's what I mean when I say we don't want to create those bureaucratic roadblocks, that like if people feel like they have to choose between doing what's right and following Communitopia policy,
Right.
that they always feel empowered to do the right thing.
Right, right. And then that's always, and it's the general circle's responsibility to have that open floor for it and to for it all to feed back to that circle to reassess it and to address it with that individual circle. You know,
And I think the
Make a
review
statement.
circle is like where the feedback loop really gets
sure,
implemented.
that's their role too, is
Yeah.
to ensure that everyone is being reviewed properly.
The worker who has to violate Communitopia policy to do what's right has to file like a report with the review circle about how
Right.
this
Right.
policy is
Right.
negatively impacting the community.
Yeah.
Yes.
Could you think
yeah.
of an example when you'd have to do that? Like, what is so rigid?
Say
that you have to-
for example, like we initiate some sort of policy where there are stipulations on receiving aid. Like someone from the community has to comply with certain I don't know, just let's say they have to be drug free to live in certain housing.
Right.
And the administrator who's like doing these intakes is like seeing you know, problems where most people can't you know, people on prescription medications are being denied access just for like
Right.
some
We've
sort of-
already passed that down, and now suddenly nobody is able to live in these houses.
they're like this
Right.
wasn't written correctly, so it's disqualifying people who should be able to qualify.
Right. So then that's passed back up, and the general circle says, okay, well then, what circumstances? Because like that's a really good example. Because say people are, I mean, for myself, psychedelics are, a really powerful and positive tool to be able
Medical
to use.
marijuana.
Right. So these things, and so do we shut people down and say, well, just no overall, and nobody's allowed to say anything, or do we say, okay, this group has passed up along the chain and saying we are seeing this actively causing an issue. There are people who are not able to live in these houses who are totally reasonable. They're just smoking DMT, and that's what's really important to them. And it's like, but they're not allowed to technically by our stipulations.
Maybe the law shouldn't be you can't consume these substances, but you cannot commit these types of behavior that are a result of
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So that's where
Without
the
getting
general
too far
circle.
down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
The point here is that we have to have these feedback loops
Right.
to be able to
That's
find
what we're
those.
doing right now.
And
yeah.
that
Yeah,
is
to be able to find
the
those
way
solutions.
that a general circle would respond to that sort of thing, where they'd say, okay, well, obviously what we wrote down and saying that no drug use whatsoever is not working, but can we back it up a little bit and say, well, it's these type, if somebody's just like constantly doing heroin and fucked up and not like doing anything and then causing a
Not
drain on the
contributing,
circumstances
right.
and all this stuff, then that's a thing that we need to address,
Centralized,
Right.
somebody in active addiction, who's the most impacted person, use that just as same somebody who's addicted can use food insecurity as a reason to gain more influence or control in the areas
Right.
that the underlying problem is what's governing. It's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
but we're still a 501c3 and we still we're gonna have federal grants that we're probably gonna have to get in the future. A lot of these things can't happen.
Right. Just based on.
Complying with the law essentially is going to be a
Exactly.
responsibility
But then-
that we have to meet.
Also, there'd be different, wouldn't there be, okay, if we have our own land in our own community, then all of this would apply, but if we're doing something where, with the grants and with like CASA or whatever,
Sure.
might that be a whole different?
It is, it certainly is, and so it's
And-
specific too, so, but that I think would be a little bit more contained to the circle, because there might be certain circles that say, based on the circumstances of this circle,
Program or,
there literally can be no drug
Okay.
consumption.
right,
So at all, and
Right.
it's like, or maybe we just say illegal, or maybe we say
During
at
certain
all,
times,
and like,
or-
right, and so what it is, it's like, we have to define what those are, and so there might be a stricter stipulation within these circles, but the overall general circle if we just pass down that rule to everybody and it's not working for every single circle, because these are the overarching
Yeah.
rule sets that we're coming up with. And then within that, we can refine it based on those circumstances, which is extremely important because it's based on the consent of that group. And if that group consents, we are all in agreement that no substance use whatsoever. Perhaps it's literally a circle associated with, combating substance use.
Right.
So then they have to be able to say, what we're doing here is no substances, and anyone who's involved in this circle and beyond it, and in this kind of this chain,
Must consent.
then we must consent to that. Doesn't mean you can't be a part of Communitopia,
Right.
because
Yeah.
Communitopia's rules say, it's okay in these certain circumstances, but we still want to have, right,
That's
right,
the challenge of what we're doing is we're building these containers of unity,
right,
and the rules have to work for everybody.
right. The major overarching rules need to
Okay.
work for all of them, whereas the individual rules need to focus on what
They
that
get to be
circle is trying to
exclusionary. They-
accomplish.
There.
State laws versus.
Yes.
Kind of like
And all
that.
of them both have to be enacted.
Right,
Anybody
right.
who's trying to open liability to the organization.
Right. Right, and that's the truth too, and that's as a whole too. That's like the main thing where anything's being passed up the chain that's going to crumble the top of it. Then
Yeah,
we
so
can't really
Sure,
continue
gotta
to
protect
do
our
that.
foundation, yeah.
But that's why we create circles like, say, like, I think of like the DMT, for instance, like people who are doing rituals and these ceremonies with ayahuasca. Well, we can create a container for that. And that Communitopia supports those containers, but that it's only within the certain understanding that, well, that's protected by religious protections.
Right,
So,
so
and we've
potentially
created
this-
that
yes.
so that now Communitopia can't get flack for it because we have our own individual,
Code of ethics.
yeah, and also laws that are protected by our government.
Yeah.
Like, like
Right.
there's a
Yeah,
way to
usually
create the
that's
church,
down.
so we can do that. But then that also means that, at the top of the chain, if we're just, if the people who are within the general circle are not like involved within the circle associated with these, ayahuasca journeys, well then now it is creating liability for Communitopia because they're not really protected by the religious protections essentially associated with that. So that's why we create the pathway for it. So a person can choose. They say, like, we basically say, well, you can't just be just going out and just doing a bunch of, ayahuasca unless it's associated with our religiously protected group here.
Right.
And so then they could just be a part of that group, and now they're protected because we have that structured that way.
Right.
That now
And
now
that
they're
group
allowed
within
to.
itself handles like monitoring.
Exactly,
Making
exactly.
sure it's
Which
all
which
checked.
they
Yeah.
have their own prerogatives
Yes.
for that.
Right.
That they have to be very careful because they also know very clearly that this is not something that the government as a whole just supports everyone going out and doing ayahuasca. But if you have a church, right, exactly like that. But then, but if we're having a a religious experience,
Like the new moon ceremonies.
that kind of stuff. And so, but right now, even just having a new moon ceremony, that doesn't now legally protect you from me, like you get caught doing ayahuasca or
Right.
DMT or whatever drug you want to be doing, you will still be arrested by our government. You know what I mean? That's why we got to create the container where it's like, this is the place and the okay
Yes.
circumstances to do that. And the reason why is because we have a whole group of people who are ensuring that it's safe. That's and we can bank on that.
You got chopped off.
So that was a really good example of that because it's it's kind of close to home, but also at the same time it's likely what we're going to be dealing with, especially if we start to go into the religious, we're starting to dive into the religious aspect of things and being able to create a church. But I highly agree that I think, by creating that church, there is a lot of protections associated with that, but we'd have to guide people in that direction and say, well, this is how we go about doing it so that Communitopia can be safe. If you support Communitopia and you want to be a part of this, then we've created the container for you to do so. And that container can expand too. Like if we then say, well, we have our own Communitopia, ayahuasca journeys, whatever. But then there's another group over here that's doing those. Well, now it's time for that circle, our, ayahuasca circle or whatever you want to call it, to communicate with that ayahuasca circle and say, okay, are they living up to the standards and the values that we want to have? And if they are, then now we can like kind of collaborate with them. Now it's like it's a group plan associated with that, instead of it being like then at any point if it's like someone wants to go out and do something that's like really that will bring liability on it, we say, well, we're just not associated with that, so you can't be associated with us. However, that doesn't mean that. Well,
That's
you
not-
can't be
It's on you.
It's on you.
Your liability is
Exactly.
personal.
Exactly. Your liability is personal, and that we're not taking on that liability, and we're not going to consent to that because it could potentially cause instability in our overall circle.
And we encourage you to experiment and
Of
report back.
course,
let
and that's
us
the thing.
know.
And perhaps you'll be able to find a group that we really actually do want to support. That is a religiously protected church, like Church of the Natives,
Or your
something,
experience will change our perception of this other group.
Right, and ultimately, ideally, we get to the point where everyone's able to just like explore their substances, and our whole government changes those circumstances, but we can't just bank on that.
Just each of us are going to be governed as with fiduciary responsibility.
Yes, fiduciary
We
responsibility.
cannot
That's right.
consent to anything that compromises 501c3 status.
Right, exactly,
If this
exactly.
were to happen, will we lose the status? Yes. Can't.
Okay, then we cannot right now. Right, so if we can create a situation where they can still explore those things that would not compromise the status, then we're in good shape and we can align with that. But we'd have to create that or find that circumstance where that makes sense.
And I think it's just it's as simple as like just disavowing responsibility. Like
Yeah.
you do what you want. Like
Right.
It doesn't have to be a Communitopia event for us to support your journey.
Exactly. Like you go do you.
We support you.
We support you as an individual and your exploration, but we're not going to put Communitopia stamp on it and say, everyone come out from Communitopia to come do this thing.
Communitopia is not going to come to your house and tell you can't do something.
Right, exactly. Right. That'd be the exact opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. So yeah, that's the whole point. We don't want to become like Big Brother and like, ensuring people aren't like able to make decisions for their own personal well-being.
Right.
But we also have to be aware of what we need to do to protect ourselves from, because we are putting ourselves in crosshairs intentionally. We are creating a structure within our government, within the normal, these are like the foundations of the way that America works, like with nonprofits and things. We created a thing that fits within the structures that are already here within our system. And so now we need to kind of play the game in a sense to be able to change the game from the inside out. And so one of those ways, as we just mentioned too, is through religious protection. So we know that's available. That's absolutely there. Now we just need to go, what steps do we need to take so that we have a religiously protected organization, right, that we can now press forward on and say, now we can put our stamp of approval on, because we know on every level we're protected literally by our government and their rules, So we find the loopholes.
It's honestly as simple as taking the Communitopia values, the mission statement, and like, for lack of a better word, like deifying them.
Yeah.
Attributing these moral principles to the universe.
Right.
to
I mean,
creation.
it's certainly religious in a.
How do we go about doing that?
So I mean,
It
in
would
one
be like
sense,
the first church of Communitopia.
yeah, and in one
basically.
sense, that is kind of what Willie's been talking about, is
Yeah,
about
he's
creating
just-
his corporation and get the review. Essentially, just need to approve and document and
You gotta have like
work with.
500 members to be recognized by the IRS as an
Sure.
official religion.
So it's through the IRS rules, right? What's that?
No, it's not.
No,
it's
no,
still
well, that's
illegal-
right,
it's
right.
Still a legal battle.
Right.
Something that,
You
like,
still have to-
ominism, is that the word?
Omnism, yeah.
Like that, and we fall under that, which is truth in all religions and all spiritualities, which I do believe in.
Right.
Sure.
You know, that kind of sums it up all together.
Yeah.
and
Sure,
we
but just by saying, well, we're omnists,
That's-
that doesn't now, then the IRS isn't just gonna be like, okay, well, you guys are good, do whatever you want.
Right,
Like, you know, it's like you have to
It's still
do
about
the
membership.
things.
You still have to
Right.
have a certain number
So-
of members.
So that's the
There has to be
component of
something
it.
making unique,
Yeah.
uniquely ours. I
True.
think we-
That's true too, and you know, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't apply the concepts of omnism. In
Right.
fact, I think that's probably the most,
It's an easy path.
that's,
towards
yeah, that's the
recognition.
easiest thing, and also the easiest way to gain members, because,
Yeah.
you know, it's like
Everybody-
literally we are accepting of you
Well,
and
because
your
it's more
religious
people
belief system.
thinking They're gonna understand, they're gonna have a different type of knowledge.
Right.
Once we're all healed, and become awoken more and more and more, you're not gonna wanna label yourself either. You know what I mean? Cause I cannot label myself at all.
You just
Yeah,
upset you.
I like
Yeah.
I like the
Every
idea
now
of like
and then.
omnistic Unitarianism.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think, you know, once you start to get the foundations of it, you start marrying people, you start having gatherings of the people to have essentially like worship sessions.
Yeah.
You know, these are all things that develop legitimacy where you then can come to the government and say, look, we've been doing it, like we already have.
Yeah, it's not hypothetical.
Yeah, it's not hypothetical anymore. It's not just like we like this religious idea and we want to do it. It's we have been doing
I
it,
mean, I
and
end
now
up-
we want the protection.
Come to our church.
I
Yeah.
do it like everywhere I go, so.
Well, true, and so, but a person doing the things
Right.
is not the same as the IRS recognizing it
But
and
how do
giving you the.
okay, you know, because some of our meetings and gatherings, we do spiritual
Sure,
stuff.
sure. We're on our way.
We're doing it.
We're on our
regardless
way.
of
This is-
Everyone.
I think it's in some sense a very Quaker style of like religious practice that we're doing because we call our get-togethers meetings.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But
That's true.
the
How
That's
do
what
Quaker
they call it.
meeting is-
transform what, like, just a meeting, because this is actually more than just a meeting. You
Sure,
know, we are co-creating the new earth.
sure.
So this is a type of spiritual religion, or
Sure.
however you want to.
I think we're,
that.
you know, I think we're all in agreement of that aspect of it.
Mhm.
And now it's about developing the legitimacy in the eyes of the government for
We-
them to see
we
the
need a
connections.
text. We need a
We-
text
yeah.
that outlines our
Right.
spiritual beliefs and the origins
Right.
of those beliefs.
Shit, fucking Scientology is able to get, you know, recognized.
Yeah.
The reason why is they have a text and they have enough people who are wanting to come through and attribute their
How do we
belief
get
system.
somebody to that?
We're doing it. We are already doing it.
Yeah.
You know, so we've gotten a good start. Now it's just more people and to have similar, like what you were saying with Communisol.
Okay.
And
Once you start doing that, the church begins to grow, you know, and then we can say, well, look, we've been doing these, you know, community meetings that are spiritual in nature. And you guys can see that now, you know, and like, and now suddenly you've got, instead of 5 people, you've got 500, 1,000, 2,000 that's going to the government being like, look, this should be recognized as religion, and they can't fight that much, you know, because it's like freedom of religion, you know?
This is after like years of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not quick, but Scientology was also like
Yeah,
way behind on their taxes, and Ron Hubbard had been on the run for a long time. That's
Yeah.
why the Sea organization existed, because he stayed in international waters, so they couldn't extradite him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was a tricky little fellow. He also said that the best way to make money is by starting a religion,
Yeah.
which he's not wrong about that. It's not, it's something that we can apply as long as we don't turn into fucking David Miscavige
Well,
and start like
I-
taking advantage of that shit and like,
I
you know,
think that
yeah.
I think that, like,
Yeah.
I think that turning our like beliefs in like egalitarianism and humanism and all these things, turning this into a religion is not going to be hard at all.
Shit, I mean, you're the document that you came up with, the pledge, that's already the beginning stages of, you know, it's like, it's,
Yeah.
sure, it's this, and it's even written like that, you know what I mean, it's written as a channeling, yeah, sure.
From the outside, of course, I have nothing to do with it, right? So I'm just thinking, I'm coming from a perspective of someone that's just hearing, right? And when we think of community, at least when I think of community, one of the biggest damages to humans, it's religion. And I think they are the ones that I feel are looking for a community that can lean on. Have you thought about what the implications or triggers of leaning into religion will do
What if-
to limit the people that actually need the community? But because of the
Label.
verbiage, the
Well,
label.
it could be an anti-religious religion, you know, it could be the
I like that.
religion that.
It could even
Says
be
it-
an atheistic
Like
religion. It could
like
even
Jen-
be
like
that.
Jen is saying.
Yeah,
I fear, because I mean, even just hearing it now, and I'm with wounds with religion, like
Yeah,
it already kind of like it removes from this humans just being good to humans and community, and getting under this religion thing, which under at least my eyes feels different.
the thing is that we're not doing the religion for the sake of being religious, we're doing it to protect.
Oh no, I understand.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I worried about just the
The verbiage.
verbiage and what's being said, and even like.
But to present it to say the government, we have to use that
Well-
verbiage, but when we present it or we talk about it with the community,
that
we
also,
can change that.
right, exactly, exactly.
Use that exact same thing, like.
Yeah, I get that, I
And,
get
and
that,
that's just something to think about, that
Mhm.
there may
I
be some
hear that.
adverse
yeah.
reactions are keeping people away that actually need the closeness with it, so just.
I would say too, that's why Communitopia as a whole, as a nonprofit, isn't religious in nature.
Right.
That we have our
Mm.
branches of religious expression that people can move into
Yeah,
based on their interest. So you don't have to be a part of the religion to be a part of Communitopia, though we have these different types of religious expression. And maybe we have a group of people who are, Muslim or something like that. And we want to create a container for them to, and it's like literally banking off of a religion that already exists, but they, to be a part of Communitopia, still need to, for us to integrate that group, they need to align with the values of Communitopia
yeah,
as a
I
whole.
think,
Maybe the relationship is different. Maybe they don't actually need to integrate into Communitopia's grander vision in every way for us to help them protect the value of their land,
Right.
buy
Could you
buy
say-
their land and lease their buildings to
could
them.
we say that our religion is respecting all humans
All
regardless of,
being.
Right.
Yeah.
regardless of what they believe?
So what we could
that
say
it's
is
They don't have to agree
Communitopia
with us.
does that.
That's
Communitopia
what's
does that.
religious to us is being
Sure.
so invested in making sure that you have the rights to.
That's a principle, and that's the protection of religion.
Radical inclusion.
And it's the
Yeah.
inclusion, but it's not necessarily like as Mark was saying, we don't necessarily want to say, well, you have to be a part of this religion that says we accept all people.
Oh,
You just need to be a part of the value system that
Yeah.
we are inclusive of people with varying religious practices.
Yeah.
So, and then from there, we can say, so are you spiritual in a sense? Okay, you are. Now we've got this place or this place or this place. You can explore these things within the umbrella of it, but that's not. It's not a
Yeah.
precursor to, because some people are going to be very resistant to the concept. Like, I don't want to join a religion. I want to
So-
join a nonprofit.
so
you
you
know,
have an organization and the religion doesn't have to be associated with it, it could just be a subsect
it's a
within.
subsect.
Right,
Exactly.
so that if that's uncomfortable to someone.
Right.
you don't have to-
Unfortunately,
There's an atheist like circle too.
Sure. In fact, I mean, even like an atheist is interesting because there's like, the Theravada Buddhism is atheistic.
Mhm.
And they don't really
believe in
believe in
creator.
gods. They believe that we are the God, that
Right,
I am
right.
the God, right? So, and that's their kind of principle. Communitopia should be set up in a way to encompass all religious ideas, but then also in the same sense of say, with this anti-Islam kind of rhetoric and everything that's going on, we don't want to then say, well, of course we'll accept a bunch of people that are wanting to go out and jihad everybody and kill people, because that's not in our values.
They
That's not
have
in our
to
value
align.
system.
That's on both sides.
Right, exactly. So, but the idea is that, but if that is you and that you want to jihad everybody, then, we still accept and love you as a person. And we're not going to say, like you're evil, we never want to talk to you. We would say, we're trying to provide an example of how not to do that. That's what
Your
we're not.
values do not align.
Yeah, exactly. Which you do you, of
Yeah.
course, but that's not something we are going to integrate into our religious umbrella, and like these religious organizations. That's not in line with what we are trying to accomplish. Same with like racism and shit. It's like You know, you don't want to just say, well, we're all inclusive, and then you get to, yeah, we tolerate you coming in and yelling at everyone that's not your race and saying, you know, you guys are evil. It's like, you know, you can go over there and do that. And then when you're ready and capable of being able to accept this wide variety of different types of people that we have here, that's when you can integrate into that. But we're not going to create it.
Or you're still gonna have contracts and other things, and
Right.
how they're going to interact in our
Right.
spaces.
Right.
Like, you could be a member and not participate in anything, so long
Right.
as your dues go through.
Exactly,
Like,
exactly.
The highest imperative we have is survival.
Yeah,
Like,
right,
which
right.
cannot be critical enough, because we don't wanna end up how Waco ended up. We don't wanna
Right.
end up fighting Bill Bowerman out Rajneeshpuram. We don't want to take on these massive enemies.
Right, right,
Because,
exactly.
like, for self-perpetuity. Like,
Right, especially, and maybe at some point, but we're
yeah.
not there. It's like, maybe at some point, that's like something that we can take on, but at
Okay,
this
the
point,
bylaws don't specifically forbid it.
exactly,
I'm
right,
not trying to
so,
fight off the FBI. and everything,
right, that's the whole point, is we set it up in a way that it's like, you know, protecting all the layers from that, from the top down. And then from that bottom up, providing the resources and
Feedback.
the feedback for what that religious organization is intending to do, and learning how we can cooperate and collaborate with that. So,
But,
you know, might be funding, but you know,
like the roles that you have within the organization, like you have to stick strong to those, because like individualism does to kind of go behind closed doors in some ways, because not every part of you has to be for the public, especially when you're operating in a professional element. But we're gonna have safeguards in place to make sure that with radical inclusivity, that things still stay within their correct kind of areas, so that that way, like, it doesn't become a jumbled mess, or the bigger problem, which is inevitably going to happen, like CIs, undercovers,
Radical
fucking-
division, radical
yeah.
divisiveness.
yeah, right,
Like, we're gonna have people that are coming and wanna do harm to the organization, to
Right.
us, like, and if we don't wanna end up like Black Panthers, like, we probably might wanna do a pretty good job of making sure that things stay in their correct kind of
right.
verticals,
Their lane.
Which-
lanes.
Right, which, yeah, that brings it back to sociocracy, right, where it's not, you're not giving even the religious organization the ability to just change everything from the top down,
Right.
but the feedback loop is there where it can be assessed from the top. Is this something that is in conflict, or is it something that we can integrate? And do we want to integrate it? You know, that's a decision based on the people who are forming the thing.
It's more of a matter of how it will be integrated, because it's if it's something that's being addressed, that's being present,
Yeah,
then it's not a matter of if we're gonna integrate it.
yeah, we still want to, we still are trying to.
Yeah,
In fact,
that's
you know,
part of our radical
the whole idea is that we integrate absolutely everything. And that, you know, there's an understanding of like, you know, this like racist group of people down here. Well, you know, we're not supporting of the racism, and we want to provide a better example that will then help them decide there's changes that need to be made within our own organization, because we want to be a part of the larger organization that is providing all that. you
And
know?
I think
Yeah,
it falls
recipients
back
should
on,
provide that as well. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if somebody's racist, just the mission remains the same.
Right,
it falls back on this belief that our circumstances are what has created this fracturing of society. And
right,
that if we resolve the base circumstances that have divided people against themselves, that we can also resolve those misplaced beliefs, misplaced values.
right. That's like already been broken, and now we're trying to fix it. But you know, the fixing isn't going to come from just saying, you know, we support you in your racism, you do your thing. It's saying we don't support this, but there's ways in which we can learn how to collaborate, because that's what's most important. And at that point, hopefully, with the way that we
By
interact
being able to see the humanity in you, hopefully you'll be able to see the humanity in the people.
Exactly.
It's making
that
those
you're
kind
in.
of personal biases immaterial or irrelevant.
yeah,
It's like, if you're willing to come in and do the work alongside the other dues paying members, volunteers, whoever, that's what matters the most.
Right, right.
Like, if you want to try and take it into a territory of psychosocial or anything of the sort, you're going to be removed from premises.
This is not a political,
Right.
this is not a political organization.
Right, exactly.
Well, so, I'm sorry, this is a really interesting conversation.
It sure is.
Especially being a strong minority on many different levels. And I think broadly, I understand the goal, the general aspect of this uniting humanity and whatnot, but I know for me, I wouldn't feel comfortable being in a place where we have, let's say, tolerant someone who believes that my humanity is less.
Right, yeah.
So the idea that, okay, you can be racist there, but we could still build these houses here for somebody, and I'm then expected to build houses with someone that I genuinely don't feel safe around.
Right, right.
Does not feel community to me.
I
Right.
didn't know that was what he was saying.
Well,
No, that's not what I'm saying.
well, no.
I understand
So
why you
how
feel.
so
Yeah,
what I
yeah, yeah.
heard was like you can
Yeah.
be racist over there.
I mean, in the world.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
that's what I
Like
mean, right.
you, Bob, you can
Yeah.
be racist, but Bob, when you come in here, we're
Mm.
gonna build these houses, and we're accepting Bob because we see the humanity in Bob, even though
I
we
get
don't
that,
agree
yeah.
with those
But will
things.
not
but-
tolerate the behavior
Right.
that can create uncomfortability.
No, but I understand that, but
Yeah.
like the behavior is not a problem until it is, and so
Right.
somebody doesn't. I personally.
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel comfortable waiting for that
100%.
one time that behavior
Right.
is awry for you to correct. I think of community for me. I think of safety,
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
like at the bottom.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and so I know that me and Chris have actually talked about this a lot, especially when we talk about like the St. Pete world. Like, I mean, sometimes it is you mentioned like the echo chamber,
Yeah.
right? Where everyone is really thinking along the same
Mm-hmm.
lines of one another. And so it's easy to create these kind of global rights and wrongs. But the community that, in talking to Chris, he actually dreams of is going to include many of other people.
Right.
And so I think it's important to have some kind of safety measures.
Yeah.
And again, I understand tolerance, but
Mhm.
there is a line there that I just want
Yeah.
you all to be very
Respect that boundary.
right. And
I
just
think
be
that-
understanding that can be a thing. So just like the religion
Yeah.
can be a thing for someone that's scary, so the racism, homophobia, like all these things can just create a very unsafe place. And
Which is what we're kind of trying to
that's
guard
what you're.
against.
That's
Right.
because that's what you're. Yes,
Right,
that's the
right.
solution that you're trying to provide.
Right.
And so, again, I don't have any answers. I'm just kind of from the outside.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sharing.
I was,
Yeah.
I
think
was,
that's a core part of what the security measures are going to be.
Right.
Because like, people that are up for more critical roles will have more overt influence, will have to pass background checks and make sure they have the
Like
correct
our
security
own
practices
background
for.
Background checks as well as, would you say they have to align with our values?
Yes.
So if you are racist
Yeah.
or homophobic, you
definitely
don't
not
have
gonna
Yeah.
be a
You're
leader.
not gonna be
position.
right. And it's like
You
you
don't
know,
Probably won't even make it into the general circle.
that's the idea. Well, you
They
probably
won't even wanna be.
we probably
That's
won't
the
be
thing
making
is, what we're
laws.
doing will repel them.
It will
that's
repel
that's
them.
the whole idea is that like it's from the top down. We're creating this set of values and standards that a person who is already racist or homophobic understands that they're not in line with the value system in the first place, and we're not going to just be like, oh well, you want to be a part of it, well have your own racist circle. Like no, like we're not gonna, we don't create that because that's already not within the lines of it.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Part of the circle.
That sounds
Right,
better.
right.
The statement that you all just said, like this kind of like
Self-regulating.
yes,
Yeah.
like that sounds better, at least again, outside in, then we will see humanity in you and allow you to.
No, I get that. That's
so-
something
yeah,
where you
the
can
way-
just blanket it and then sweep shit under
Right,
the
so,
rug.
right,
That's the best
and
way.
that is the fear of
Yeah.
many minorities in the world
Yeah.
that buy books. Books look really good. Laws look really good. How they're interacting, there's so many loopholes and around that,
Right.
that it's that ambiguity
Yeah,
that
it's
typically
dangerous.
feels so
Dangerous.
scary
Yeah.
for minorities in general.
Yeah.
And
That can't
so
it can't be
that's
ambiguous.
the kind of thing that
Yeah.
Yeah.
And verbiage, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like, it's what's like coming to me is like this importance to distinguish between like having clear policies for how to deal with things if they happen. And clear policies that we don't tolerate like a witch hunt mentality, that there's no like, this
Right.
is not a focus of why we're here. We're not here to say, oh, this person's not good enough to be in Communitopia. This
Right,
person
right.
said this to me and they don't deserve to be in Communitopia.
Right, so now we have
And
routes
so,
to
like-
address
And I agree.
it, right.
100%.
So if somebody might not even know that they're being, what's up, Willie? So, you know, if a circumstance happens where somebody is even sometimes unknowingly acting in some sort of racist way, do we just say, delete you, you gotta get out of here? Or do we say we have these pathways to address this problem that is not aligned with our value system? We have to have
the conflict resolution.
Right, and we have to have that. And so, you know, it brings to my attention like a circumstance that I always found really interesting where this Black dude was I don't know I can't explain it to the greatest degree, but essentially he was interacting with one of the heads of the Ku Klux Klan. And for a long time, the head of the Ku Klux Klan was like, you know, fuck this guy, you know, I hate Black people, blah, blah, blah. He was just very racist. But this guy just kept coming back and being friendly to him,
I remember.
right?
That.
And
I think
eventually they
I
became
can
friends. Yeah, and eventually they became friends.
Yeah.
And eventually he said, well, I don't want to be a part of the Ku Klux Klan anymore because this is not aligned with the way that I now think.
Right.
And so it's just, that's
But that Black
the
person
type of-
had that to give.
Right,
They
exactly.
had to,
And you can't
that
expect
came-
everyone
that's
to.
exactly
Yeah, you
what
can't
I'm
expect everyone to. In fact,
People
the
are
whole
coming
point is, yeah, right. So, yeah.
I like that archetype.
That's
Right.
on my back. I didn't bust a solid.
Yeah.